from WBRN Radio in Boston on the Boston Red Network. This is the anniversary, the second anniversary of the death of Jerry Pippin, the man that founded Internet radio. He was the proselytizer. He was the spiritual leader of Internet radio, what is now known as podcasting. In fact, I was talking to Roberta Scott, a friend of Jerry Pippin's, and she related a story to me about how CBS caught on to podcasting from Jerry Pippin, that he started this back in 2000. I had known Jerry Pippin since 1999. And he had his on-demand shows from Las Vegas when he did a talk show overnight there, and from his memory show, etc. You can hear some of those at jerrypippin.com. Jerry, no doubt, was an innovator. He was a father. He was a husband. He was a soldier, a Vietnam, a veteran. A very sad loss for him, but for his family, I should say. This, we were looking on Facebook and reminded of the first anniversary show we did last March on the 2nd, and this is the second anniversary show. We have revised some things, but the show that actually we are doing, the Conscience of a Red State Liberal, was recorded in 2013. So in other words, we were 4 years into the past and 2 years without Jerry. But the words ring out, and this is some of the current polling. Update this from a number of sources here. This is fairly current polling, and we'll get this in from CNN. First of all, this is on the Affordable Care Act and its popularity. This is dated on the 19th of January 2017. Found that 49% of the people polled favored the law. Slightly more than 47% opposed it. The response shows people may not know what they got until they have it. That's what Jerry was talked about. It was the first time in at least 18 polls since 2010 that people favored the act. Obamacare's newfound popularity is coupled with how 82% of respondents believe it's at least somewhat likely that the Trump administration will try to repeal it and replace it, something they have not been able to do. And portions of the uninsured have reached an all-time low. More people felt it had the largest portion of response, 38% said it's still too soon to tell. Now, we look at some of the numbers here. 37% thought it failed, 23% said it did not. This was a poll of 2,000 people. But we have also a PPP poll here, and the PPP poll is a more recent poll, found that 50% supported it and only 37% were opposed, and only 33% think that the best path towards the Affordable Care Act's outright repeal, while 61% think it should be kept with whatever needs to be fixed. By 58 to 29 spread, voters wanted anyway, we won't get into that. This isn't a Russian situation. Jerry would have liked this. Nonetheless, this poll was conducted on the 24th of February by PPP out of North Carolina, a Democrat leading organization, but others have also looked at the Affordable Care Act and its favorability here, and we see a new trend, and the Republicans are basically, as one would say, tied up in Congress as far as the repeal is concerned of the Affordable Care Act. some Republicans, Governor Kasich, he's the governor of Ohio, that have adopted the expansion of Medicare, want to keep that part in place. And since you have 20 million people or more out there that have bought insurance through the exchanges, even DJ Trump had to admit you just simply cannot untangle that. Paul Ryan and his gang would like to replace it with a number of right-wing strategies out of the American Enterprise Institute. However, it's not carrying the day. It is one of those items that there is a lot of problems in it, and there will remain problems here. The contradictions within the Republican Party, the idea of providing tax payments are favored by some, but not by all, including Rand Paul is not in favor of doing that particular item. So in other words, we have a lot of problems out there with the Affordable Care Act, and there is no easy fix at this point in time for the Affordable Care Act. And it is one of those things, an all-out fight is coming, and due to the popularity of the Trump administration, about 42 or so, 43, it sort of goes up and down, but they're not in a position to mandate any significant changes, and that is one of the problems there. This is an administration that came in a low turnout election, and at the same time, roughly 80,000 votes in 3 different states, i.e. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, elected this particular administration. So you have a situation where you have a very unpopular administration, you have a Republican Congress, but at the same time, the president is in peril. You have all kinds of machinations going on with the Russian Federation. Did they help Trump steal the election? Now we have a character named Beauregard Sessions that they're calling for his removal, and it just goes on and on and on. And about the Affordable Care Act, but this is from the GOP standpoint. If they don't repeal it, but the problem is the repeal itself is a very, very difficult situation for them to execute, and it could play very, very strongly into the 2018 election. And this is from The Hill. And 2 months into new Congress, a bill to repeal the Affordable Care Act has yet to move. Initially, Republicans had hoped to put a bill on Trump's desk on the day of his inaugural. The time frame moved back to President's Day in February, and now it's into March, and nothing has happened. A draft plan leaked last week. Parts of the plan, tax refunds, a new program that conservatives fear could cost nearly as much as the Affordable Care Act itself. The approach has left a lot of conservatives scratching their heads. And Jordan, who is one of the Republicans from Ohio, is scratching his head. Skepticism is shared by the chair of the Freedom Caucus. That's somebody named Mark Meadows of North Carolina, further dimming the draft's prospects. The Republican study chair there, Mark Walker, weighed in. The draft legislation, which was leaked last week, risks continuing major Obamacare entitlement expansions, delaying any reforms, according to Walker. And in the Senate, you have trio calling for back to basics approach that lead to full repeal. This is Senator Lee, Cruz of Texas, and Rand Paul all sent tweets Monday to reinforce the debate. 2 years ago, the Republicans voted to repeal the act. That was the 2015 repeal language should be on the floor. So then you have Heritage Action in here their offices, elected offices, remain in the dark over the creation of the new program and evidently supposedly locked up. We'll put this up there, but so Republicans are faced with a choice. If their draft cannot gain enough support to pass, what do? The better question may be who do you put the pressure on their own party? Can they put the pressure on the conservatives, put the pressure on the moderates, etc.? Fay is not an option. Now the GOP need to regain the momentum. This is from Heritage Action. But there will be no action on this. It's in a political schism. So on we go to the 2013 show, The Conscience of a Red State Liberal. Jerry talks about the Affordable Care Act and its general effects and the conservative movement. Again, to Jerry's family, particularly to Roberta Scott, to his longtime producer, Gene Swadley, and his children. It's a very sad day for us. Roberta had just placed roses on Jerry's grave. Of a Liberal on the 8th of October 2013. And Jerry Pippin is here, as he normally is when we do The Consciousness of a Liberal. And we'll start this off talking to Jerry. Jerry is a red state liberal that literally lives 3 or 4 miles from Tom Coburn, the arch conservative he was. Now he's the middle-of-the-road conservative. His political ranker is changing every day. If we were to put a gauge up there with the right-wing Republicans roaming around, like Canadian Cruz and his brother-at-arms, John Boehner, and Cantor, you can't tell who those characters are. So thus you have the gentleman from New York, Representative King, and Coburn, and King is no doubt a conservative, and Tom Coburn, Jerry's neighbor, standing out as being sane in an insane situation that is revolving around a hysteria over Obamacare, which is now secondary to the budget, which they would like to cut again. So now we'll give the floor to Jerry Pippin, a man that's been a journalist, a broadcaster for 40 years.
Actually, more like 50 years, Boston Red, but it's very interesting about what is happening, and that's not really the correct adjective. Interesting doesn't really cover it. It's horrendous. It's shocking, and it's well past the traditional battles we have over ideology, and no longer liberal and conservatives as much as for instance, you mentioned Senator Coburn. Senator Coburn has not changed his position on anything, but everything is relative, and compared to what's happening in Washington now, especially in the House, all of a sudden Senator Coburn sounds like a moderate Democrat. It shows you how far to the right we have reached. And the interesting thing that John Boehner talks about all the time as Speaker of the House is he just wants to have a conversation. Well, they've had plenty of time to have conversations. They didn't take place when they were putting together Obamacare. In fact, the Republicans worked in lockstep to present it. And since then, when it did pass, we got an election, and Obama ran on Obamacare and got a strong referendum. He won the election against an opponent who said that he was going to change Obamacare. Seems to me that sometime intelligence would say, you know, let's move on to something else, and if you want to change Obamacare, let's wait and see what happens, and you can make changes along the way, piece by piece. But holding up the nation as a hostage, and all of a sudden, people are beginning to feel the pinch of government services, and if they tie the budget talks into this and the budget extension, basically after the 17th of October, when we run out of money and we only can spend what we take in each day, Social Security, Medicare, nursing home payments, hospital payments, many other things like that, in which a huge amount of the American population depends on, regardless of whether the conservatives like that or not. Not everyone saved a nest egg, but even those people that did save a nest egg, when they start sending their own money, with the high cost of medical expenses, it doesn't last very long. I can tell you that personally over the years of trying to get my eyes and going through experimental operations and everything else. And then when I developed cancer and other things that have happened to me, when my diabetes suddenly no longer responded to the pills, and I had to go on insulin, and even that hasn't worked very well. No one really knows how to control it at this point, and that's the reason I'm here at the Eastgate Medical Facility to begin with. It's because you never know. You can feel great. You can be at the top of the game, and if you want to find out something about that, on my website, jerrypippin.com, I have a column by Jane Swartley, who's been with me 8 years, and she's been our web producer and researcher, and she came here last week for a high school reunion, and she talks about not only my attitude and how things are going, but the people that are surrounding me and how people are reacting who know me personally to the major medical problems I do have. Now, I bring this up on the radio not because I'm asking for some sympathy, but I'm trying to give you a background that I know from personal experience what the government has done. And the government has saved the lives of many people, made them possible to get medical treatment, and all of a sudden, we're back to the same thing. We understand that people don't want to pay a lot of money out for health insurance, but you have to have a pool. That's the way it works, and the Republicans are the ones that wanted to have corporate involvement and insurance company involvement. Now we have an interesting thing. They've shut down the government, and at the same time, what used to be one of their major constituencies, and that's the healthcare, the hospitals and things like that, have turned against them, but it doesn't seem to make a difference. And we've got several polls out here, and I mentioned the Pew Research poll at one time on another broadcast, in which it shows the public is about as divided as Congress itself. How did we get into this position? I lay a lot of that on the fact that they dismantled the Fairness Act. People didn't have to do objective news anymore. They feel free to present their ideology and their ideas, and what they basically it turns out to be is corporate lackeys with media voice, and they actually are out there pumping these very hyper-conservative, unrealistic ideas about the budget and how we're spending our money. And the fact is that they're not dealing with real facts, and they are blind to what is happening. And my personal opinion about it is that Congress, and this has happened before, I've mentioned this before and broadcast, it happened to the L.A. Police Department, is everybody needed to be paid properly. So there's another officer in L.A. that makes under $60,000, and what happened is they moved out of Los Angeles proper, moved out to the suburbs. They come into the cesspool of Los Angeles, and they feel free to look down on everyone. And so there've been some efforts with neighborhood policing to get this back to the point where people know they're police officers. But now this has happened to Congress. They've got such a great job now. They work Tuesday through Thursday, and they don't work very long on any day. Some of them are able to sleep in their offices. not even pay rent or any expenses at all. There's several organizations that allow congressmen and senators to stay there with almost no rent at all, looking for favors. And the congressmen and senators these days feel free to take what would be considered in the music business payola. So for the life of me, I can't understand what happened to the political system completely, but I have a hunch it has something to do with media infiltration by the far right wing. And anybody that's tried to listen to talk radio knows that the only place you can get a place where they talk the interviews with different people at all is NPR. And that's limited to a couple hours a day with Diane Rain. And so the fact is that people aren't getting the straight skinnies, so to speak. They're getting a slanted version of the news, and it's just amazing what is happening. I say let's have Obamacare and see how it works, and then we can fine-tune it and change it as we need. That's my opening statement, Austin Red. What do you think about it all?
Well, let's get back here. I was just looking at the Washington Post here, and the writer here is Robert Samuelson, and he basically, I'll just read, it's a brief article. The government shutdown can teach us a lot about American politics. Even after it's over, a question central will remain. Why did they do it? Why did the congressional Republicans trigger a shutdown for which they would predictably be blamed, from which they could win few Democratic concessions? The conventional answer blames stupidity. Paul Ryan is living in his office on his air mattress, so he's getting a free ride on the taxpayers and getting his salary. I don't know if he's renounced it lately here. So, and he only gets to work, let's see, was it Tuesday to Thursday? I don't know if they fly first class back, or coach, not sure on that one. You have to ask Tom Coburn. So, in other words, this is the setup, and this is what we get, say, from the Washington Post. He's talking about ideology. Yes, no doubt there's ideology there, but what Mr. Samuelson doesn't explore is that this ideology itself, repeating myself here, is bought and paid for and shaped, as you correctly pointed out, by these monopoly media concerns, the Fox, the NBCs, ABCs, all of them in cohorts. They're cahoots, I should say. So Boehner is there, but is ideology driving Boehner? Your take, Jerry.
Well, I think Boehner is actually being driven by the idea he wants to keep his job. He wants to be Speaker of the House. I think his ambition is overriding a practicality in what his mission was. And, I wanted to inject something here while you were talking about that, is that this is the first time that I know of where the government has sat down and because of the right wing, and the government, the right wing in Congress has made a conscious decision to get their way or no way, and they're always accusing Obama of my way or the highway. But in my opinion, Obama has a high ground. He won an election over Obamacare. It was passed, and the Republicans should have been negotiating, sitting down, and having a conversation back in those days. And after all, the Obamacare program is really very similar to what Governor Romney did in Massachusetts for insurance. And then Governor Romney comes in and runs for president and has the chutzpah to say he's going to reduce Obamacare when it might as well have been Romney care. And I think if we really have anything that's could have been changed, and probably President Obama would secretly agree with this statement, is that he shouldn't have tried to work with Republicans, because it absolutely did not work. They just did not want to do anything. And this is the first time that I know that, and we've had shutdowns before, but this is the first time that people had dug in their heels so deep, and the conscious effort of the right-wing strategy of the Tea Party was to shut down the government and leave it shut down until the other side folds and has to give in. And I think President Obama is making a good point. Unfortunately, it's not playing well with the public because they don't ever hear him say it, thanks to the way the media presents the news these days. But as President Obama and his allies have said in the Senate and the House, if you give in to blackmail, if you give in to demands of getting the government back at any cost, then that just encourages the other side to use the same weapon the next time around. And if America has a chance to survive, and I know that sounds almost too dramatic, but believe you me, that is what's at stake. The bondholders will begin to walk away from America. America no longer will have the moral superiority of leading in the nation. Other nations say, why should we have a government and a system that like you have? And on and on and on. Damage has been done, and I'm not sure it can even be corrected now. And there seems to be no effort by the right wing to make one simple compromise. Now, a lot of people say, well, why don't President Obama give them something to save a little face on? Well, because he's learned by experience that if you give them an inch, they'll want a mile. And basically, Obama has a constituency that's pretty unhappy with him because he didn't have a single-payer system and didn't do some other things because Obama thought that he could work with the Republicans. Now, as a man who's been covering these things for some time and living in a red state that's full of people, I mean, in Oklahoma, Obama is just about a dirty word. And unfortunately, I don't know why, because he hasn't done anything here. I believe it's that we seem to be in our native Oklahomans, and I'm proud of them in many ways, but they seem to be very gullible to what Rush Limbaugh and the like say every day, even though many of them don't listen to Rush. But the way that works is those that do start spewing out what Rush said that day, and pretty soon it's gospel truth, even though we know that many times it's not even close to the real facts. And so that's what we're facing here. And I do have a solution if you'd like to hear about it, Boston Red.
Definitely.
Yeah, okay. I think the only way we're going to correct this is to get a constitutional amendment in which it requires each congressional district to have an equal amount of Republicans and Democrats, as close as possible, because the Congress has never really changed what they gerrymandered. All of these Tea Party people are in safe districts, and that's not the way Congress is supposed to work. It was a place where there was give and take, a discussion would be given, facts would be considered, and compromise would be there. With these folks, compromise is a dirty word. So I can't see that they're going to change it in Washington. It's going to be outside, and somebody's got to start pushing a congressional, a constitutional amendment to the Congress and requiring them to straighten up these districts. Because now there's no way that you can get a minority to work with the majority. Because the minority, which is the Tea Party and the red states, will dig in their heels because they can know they'll always get reelected.
Well, here's a comment, Jerry, from a fellow that's been around as long than you, named Bill Moyers. He was with LBJ. I'll quote him directly here. He said, when the president refused to buckle to this extortion, they threw their tyrant, Bill said, like the die-hard hordes of racist South a century and a half ago who would destroy the Union before giving up their slaves. So these people burned down the place, sank the ship. He goes on to tell where the traditional redneck ambition of the Republicans could lead us. And I'll have this after we finish up here, his little essay. He called it The Sabotage of Democracy. This is Bill Moyers. So we'll go to that.
Well, I think he's right, and what you're doing is no longer is a democracy A, informed enough to make decisions, B, nobody's listening to the majority of it, and 3, with our ability today, without the Fairness Act and broadcasters having to not answer to the government at all, and the FCC, they basically can continue the brainwashing of the public. And so I don't see any hope here except the fact that the madness must end, and it will end one way or the other. And unfortunately, I think it'll only end with irreparable damage to our democracy, and it will be people will suddenly understand that the government has become an integral part of life, especially for those who, for one reason or another, are not able to rise to what has been happening in society. And what's been happening in society is very important. No longer, no other time in history have we so many millionaires, so many wealthy people, and then no middle class. On the other side of the end, we have never in the history have we had so many poor people. And there doesn't seem to be any effort to even it out. And part of that is human nature and understanding. Once you get yours, well, you can be. We used to tell jokes. I was a Democrat till I made my first 100,000. Now I'm a Republican, and the self-esteem issue is actually selfishness esteem, I think. And as a result of that, with the selfishness of America, that they don't want to really help anybody, only a few philanthropic people are around anymore, and sometimes they have a lot of trouble even raising enough money to when they're obviously doing good work. And then you, of course, have a bureaucracy in which people suddenly start making good money, even in those organizations supposedly to help people, and a lot of the money goes other places. So I think cynicism was running rampant, and cynical might be fine at some time, but it can't tolerate a democracy in which you have the minority and the majority rights, and you should come together to create something that everybody could agree on. And the right wing here, as you know, believes that the compromise is a dirty word.
Well, that's true. Let's go to Bill Moyers here, then we'll do the ball score, and then we'll talk a little about your little project that you have coming up here. Just a second.
And now to the people who refuse to let democracy work, the people who hate government so much they've shut it down. Unable to abide by the results of democracy when they don't win, they turned on it. Republicans have now lost 3 successive elections to control the Senate, and they've lost the last 2 presidential elections. Nonetheless, they fought tooth and nail to kill President Obama's health care initiative. They lost that fight, but with the corporate wing of Democrats, they managed to bend it toward private interests. So we should be clear on this. Obamacare, as it's known, is deeply flawed. Big subsidies to the health insurance industry, a bonanza for lobbyists, no public option. And, as the New York Times reported this week, millions of poor are left unloved after riding on Air Force One with President Clinton and had to be
around the U.S. on various stations, forums like ours, and points in between, where you'll be talking several times a week in a little short format.
Right. 5 minutes usually, and it's a commentary on, and it's not just completely left-wing. I'm fairly moderate on many of these details, but I think that someone needs to get the truth out. That's one of the things I liked about Moyer's piece, is he played some of the outlandish things that the right has been saying, and he showed it was not true each time. And so we as you know, are still recovering from cancer and a diabetes attack, and I have a problem with my kidneys, and then I'm taking dialysis, and then I've got the problem with my bladder. It's not working, and my eyesight is getting worse, and I'm going over to University of Oklahoma Medical Center, Dean A. McGee Eye Institute, which saved my vision. Actually, they brought it back from complete darkness to I was able to function. As you know, Boston Red, you've been following my career since the early 70s. Or I'm sorry, 2000.
Right.
2002,
late 90s,
2003.
Late 90s, yeah.
Yeah, and the point is that I've spent all my funds. I've made a lot of money in broadcasting over the years, but I've spent everything on medical care.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars, yeah.
And now I'm at the beck and call of the government programs, and these right-wing Republicans are acting like they're gold-plated, and they're far from that. Actually, I only have $50 left out of my Social Security. State of Oklahoma takes it all.
Okay.
Because of Medicaid. Okay. And so I'm making money on the side, but not as much anymore because I'm incapacitated. I'm here in this medical facility, and I still have my apartment studio, and I still go up there when I can. But right now, I can't get up there until after the 18th. And so, thanks to you, Boston Red, and thanks to Jane Swartley, and thanks to Roberta Scott, I'm able to keep my broadcast business going. And I urge people to go over, if they want to understand what I'm talking about, the best thing to do is go over to jerrypippin.com and click on a column that Jane Swartley wrote about her impressions of where I am and what is happening to me. And I think it'll give you a clear picture of the adversity that one has to overcome. And unfortunately, not everybody, and I'm not bragging on my ability here or constitutional strength, but not everybody has the willpower I have. And the stubbornness comes in that I've refused to bend down to cancer, to kidney disease, to serious eye problems, and I've tried to still function, and I intend to keep doing that until I can't do it anymore.
Well, that is commendable. Again, that's jerrypippin.com. And Jerry, what's the address, the postal address? So if they want to send cards, of course,
okay,
funds
it's
or
Post
whatever.
Office Box 333, Muskogee, Oklahoma 74402. That's Post Office Box 333, Muskogee, Oklahoma, Muskogee, Oklahoma 74402. I came back home when my health problems started, and went back to KBIX, the station I started at, and we began to investigate the internet because I knew that things would continue to get worse, and in many parts of the country, expenses are very, very high. Here in Oklahoma, the cost of living hasn't risen as much as it has in other places. So I was able to come home and be very creative and work all this time. But, thanks to, I guess the illness is catching up with me. now even that lifestyle is caught up with me.
Well, hopefully you'll recuperate on that. And also, when I recall when I first encountered you, you could see, and that was before, of course, your mother was murdered. You were driving a car and had virtually 20/20 vision.
Yeah, I was doing fine.
Right at that time.
I had 13 eye surgeries.
Yeah.
3 of them experimental,
right.
And they rebuilt my retinas,
right.
And I could see pretty well for several years.
Well, yeah. When I first met you, you had not even had an eye operation. You didn't have the diabetes. You were doing just fine. You were driving around and doing shows and whatever. Anyway, our time has run out here. Hopefully, we'll start to.
This tax refund season, Metro PCS has an offer so good you'll want to shout it from the mountaintops.
Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 4G LTE phones for free.
Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free 4G LTE smartphones from brands like Samsung and LG. Only at Metro PCS.
Limited time offer. Sales tax not included in phone price. After instant rebate. Coverage and services not available everywhere. See store for details and terms and conditions.